The Rockpile Report, the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to a Christmas edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bills season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And we are here talking about the holidays that will be. Guys, this is our Week 16 preview. The Buffalo Bills are going to be playing the Los Angeles Chargers, which is funny because I usually screw that up and call them the San Diego Chargers by reflex. Same way you still call the Washington, whatever the hell they are, the Commanders. You still call them the Redskins because that's what we've known them as our entire lives. So we're here having this conversation, and it's interesting because before we started recording, Chris and I were talking about his Christmas plans. Now, here's what I love. For as much as Chris loves the holiday of Thanksgiving, Chris despises the holiday of Christmas.
100%.
And I love...
Christmas is the worst holiday, and it's strictly from the standpoint of gifts and gift giving and receiving gifts and the anxiety that comes along with, especially if you're in a relationship. Oh, I didn't get good gifts, so now my significant other thinks less of me, or something like that's what I go through with. It's like every year I'm not going to be able to top gift giving from the previous year. That's how I view it. I hate Christmas.
See, and this is where now I sit here and I talk all the time pretty openly about my narcissism and just the way that I am the most important thing in the room at all times. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't change just because it's Christmas. Funny thing about the holiday of Christmas is that for at least a week leading up to and maybe the day after Christmas Day, I'm one of the best versions of myself that you're ever going to run into. And it's funny to hear you talk about gift giving. To me, gift giving is easy. When people go, oh, well, what do you want for Christmas? Nothing. Why? Because I'm an adult male. I'm an adult male who, when I need something, I just go get it. And they go, okay, but what do you want? Well, you don't understand. I generally speaking don't want more things than I need. And if I deem something important enough, I just go and get it. So I know that I am very difficult to buy gifts for, so I encourage people not to. Just don't. It doesn't mean I won't get you something, and I understand that there's this, oh, if you give me a thing, I get... No. Understand. I'm not doing it. I'm not saying it. I'm not trying to be a martyr in this. What I'm saying is I don't need things, so I don't want things. Now, I like giving gifts because I understand, I don't know, it scratches an itch for me. Now, in a relationship, Chris, you said that you feel a pressure to perform there? See, I remember one of the first years we were doing the podcast. It might have been the first year we were doing the podcast. I got half in the bag during our Festivus special and then proceeded to drive home and box up a pair of diamond earrings to give to my girlfriend, then wife, well, now wife, for our first Christmas. They don't all have to be winners, Chris. You do know that, right?
Sure.
What are you doing? So you do that one year, and then the next year it's a soda stream machine. And then the next year it's gloves they wanted. Why? Because that's the thing they said they wanted. That's easy, right?
Yeah.
There's no pressure there. I find it funny that for someone who cares so little about what people think, you would be susceptible to that pressure. You got to admit the food's pretty good, right? The Christmas spreads are usually, it's not Thanksgiving, but it's pretty good, right? I don't know how your family does it.
It's not Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving's the goat holiday.
Are you going to be one of these people who eventually you're just at the bar on Christmas?
If there's one open.
There's a lot of bars. You would be shocked at the number. There's a place here in Depew called Magruder's that I used to joke around all the time. That it's look, my ex-girlfriend and I, we used to joke about how, hey, we'll each call in sick like the movie Four Christmases. and then we'll just go do the buffet at Magruder's and then walk home. Tell me it doesn't sound like a great Christmas.
Sounds fun.
No, wasn't going to work. And ultimately, that's not what I want. What I want to see is I want to see my family. Now I've got kids. I want to see them having a good time. I don't know. I mean, New Year's Eve, I'm going to be where New Year's Eve. Christmas Eve, I'm going to be where I always am. On my couch with a glass of bourbon watching Home Alone. The quintessential Christmas movie. If you had to name a Christmas film that you think most encapsulates the spirit of the holiday, Chris, what is it?
Christmas Story.
Okay.
Nothing else.
That's it? That's your only Christmas film?
Yeah.
Have you watched it already this year?
Not yet.
What are you saving it for?
I'm waiting for TNT to air it for 24 hours in a row.
What are your feelings on A Christmas Story?
It's the GOAT Christmas movie.
Okay, so you'll watch that too?
Yeah. The Christmas Story is the best Christmas movie.
Okay, what other Christmas movies do you enjoy?
Home Alone and Die Hard.
Now, I want you guys to take note. He just named 4 different films, all of which are culturally relevant. At the same time, this man has never seen a single mob movie. Not a single one. Chris, The Godfather 2?
Never seen it.
A Bronx Tale.
Don't know it.
Goodfellas.
Haven't seen it.
Yet for a guy who hates Christmas, he's never seen, for a guy who hates the holiday, he's seen more of those movies than, I can't even talk to you about this. I love you, but that's
I've seen Coneheads.
It always comes back to fucking Coneheads with you.
It is. My brother asked me, he sent me a text. He's like, what DVDs do you have? And I was like, well, they're all boxed up because DVDs are irrelevant.
Because DVDs stopped mattering 10 years ago.
And he was like, well, no, can you send me a picture of all the DVDs that you have? Because I'd like to rip them and put them on my server. That way I can stream them, which makes sense. And I sent him all of the DVDs that I had. And what I have to bring to Kansas this week are all Saturday Night Live related DVDs. Best of Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, commercial parodies, Christmas. It's all SNL. I think he gave me a couple movies. I got to bring Slapshot, Top Secret, and the Slammin' Salmon to Kansas for my brother to rip.
The fact that you own those movies but you've never seen A Bronx Tale makes me sick.
No.
You'll be in Kansas? Any chance you're stopping out at a certain whiskey outlet?
Friday.
Yeah.
I'm going Friday to the Whiskey Snug.
It's one of the greatest places on earth, and that truly is a Christmas miracle. The night before Christmas, not a creature was stirring except for the Buffalo Bills, who are going to be taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. And it's a weird time to be playing this football team. Like, I've seen people suck at things, but they're a whole different breed. The time, Chris, what do we got there?
It's at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. If you do not live in the LA or Buffalo market, this game is only streaming on Peacock. The Peacock app. Now, Chris, is this the first football game to stream exclusively on the app?
Yeah, it's the first one. I went back.
You know what that means? There's going to be problems.
Yeah, I went back and looked week 8 when we had the Amazon game against Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
That was shown locally on WKBW. So I would assume they might also get this Peacock game. Although I could see it also being on NBC because Peacock is an NBC-owned app. You'll just want to check your local listings. I think even if you live in Batavia, you got to have Peacock. It's not going to be shown out there. Definitely not shown in Rochester. You got to have Peacock if you live in Rochester. It'll be annoying. I don't even know who's calling the game. It might be definitely not Tirico. because he's going to do Sunday night. I don't know who else NBC has in their arsenal. It might be Noah Eagle, Ian Eagle's kid.
What?
Yeah. That might be my guess. It might be Noah Eagle.
That's gross. That's gross. I feel like this is one of those games where you just try to find the audio on the radio somewhere. Maybe you watch it, but you get this. I just feel like this is going to be an unlistenable game. When you take a look, like, I don't know who the officiating crew is, but I don't think it much matters. I also don't know.
Oh, actually, it is Tirico and Collinsworth.
Really?
They're going to call. I figured they would be doing the game Sunday night. Why would they be doing Saturday night?
Because they probably picked that when they thought it was supposed to be Justin Herbert and Josh Allen. That would make sense, right?
Well, I'm going to look up, see who's on Sunday Night Football.
Good. So while he looks that up, guys, these two teams, like when you look at the injury situations...
Patriots, Broncos.
Ew, fuck. God, can we take that off the air?
No.
Like, I don't think that needs to be televised at all, much less in prime time. You mean to tell me they couldn't find another game to flex?
No.
Are they trying to get Bill Belichick fired?
Well, you have to factor in that there's still no heavy bowl games, so that's why there's two games on Saturday, and then Monday's Christmas. Monday is going to have 3 games, so your ability to flex Patriots, Broncos back into a 4 o'clock spot, nobody's going to... There's no other game. Your options would be Cardinals, Bears, or Jaguars, Buccaneers to get flexed, and that's an equal game.
They're all terrible. So when I look at the injury list for each team ahead of this game, it's pretty wild because I can't pronounce half of the names. Chris, give that second one down. Like, so obviously some guy named Nick Williams, a defensive tackle, he was out last week.
Amen Agbamimiga.
This is followed by who?
Somebody that also might be related to him. They just
Otto
forgot letters.
Agbanya.
Yeah, Agbanya.
So I a whole bunch of alphabet soup going on here, both at linebacker, defensive tackle. Donald Parham Jr. missed another game at tight end. Dean Leonard, the cornerback, was taken out in the middle of the game. And Keenan Allen missed last week's game. Meanwhile, for the Buffalo Bills, our injury report, injuries of note are actually pretty short. You know, the ones we know about. Micah Hyde, A.J. Epinesa. They were ruled out of last week's game. He said they're week to week, so I'm sure we'll revisit it, but I would be shocked if on a short week they play, Chris.
I thought McDermott said Hyde would be the only candidate between the two for a possible IR stint.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's still a thing and how that works with playoffs.
Well, I was going to say, I think the problem is that if you IR them now and they don't have time to come back during the regular season, I don't know if that... why don't you do this? Tweet at Banged Up Bills right now and just see if we can get an answer by the end of this podcast. Reach out to Banged Up Bills. You can follow him on Twitter at Banged Up Bills, Dr. Kyle Trimble. Reach out to Dr. Kyle Trimble and see what he knows about that ruling. A.J. Epinesa, Micah Hyde, week to week. Spencer Brown had to get x-rays coming out of that Cowboys game. I guess it was on his finger, thinking he might have had a broken finger, but he said everything's fine. Jordan Phillips left the game but came back. He's questionable. And Ty Johnson, who had a shoulder injury, he did get cleared after being taken out of the game to return it. And I remember when I saw him get walked off, I was like, shit, that's bad. So really, we dodged a lot of injury bullets, but that's what happens when you're the hammer and the other team is the nail for 4 straight quarters. The storylines ahead of this game are really interesting. When you think about where the Chargers were supposed to be and what they're built to be. So, Chris, if you want to do me a favor, and on this screen in front of me where you currently have the Chargers injuries up, go to Spotrac and look at the Chargers cap situation for 2023. Salary cap table. Yep, there we go. When you think about what the Chargers were trying to do this year, they paid their quarterback, one of the richest contracts in quarterback history, in NFL history. Khalil Mack is on your roster, and he's making a pretty significant sum of money. I think his dead cap right now is $31.9 million. He's making $16 million against the cap. You've also paid wide receivers like Keenan Allen. And then beyond that, you've got a bunch of guys who you've paid who are making money who really aren't, I don't know how meaningful they are for you. Guys like Austin Johnson at defensive tackle. Never heard of him. He's making $9.5 million against the cap this year. Now, Austin Eckler's here at 9.1. Derwin James is 9.1. And these are guys who are great, but they are also becoming less and less durable as years go by. A defensive end named Sebastian Joseph, who I've never heard of before, is making $9 million against their cap. There is a... Like it seems like the way they spent their money, they expected this to be a team that could win. Now, Chris, if you scroll down, you can see how many dollars worth of cap space are sitting on IR if you go all the way to the bottom of this table. And it's, okay, here we go. So Joey Bosa at $15 million cap hit, 15.7. Mike Williams at a $13 million cap hit. Justin Herbert at an $8 million cap hit. That's crazy to see that much money sitting on a team's injured reserve, isn't it?
Yeah, what is it? Totals $42 million?
$42.5 million in total cap space sitting on IR right now. And then you look at their win total and you question, okay, how did we get here? Well, it's really easy. I mean, you look at this 2023... Chris, go to the LA Chargers, that page that I had to pull up. At Pro Football Reference. There we go. So look at this. Look at their season performance. They open with 2 straight losses, but they're both firefights and they're close games. They lose to the Dolphins in a game where they just came up short on the final drive of the game. They lose to the Tennessee Titans in overtime. I think it's when we all should have known what they were going to be this year. But then they beat the Vikings in a 1-score game, and they beat the Raiders in a 1-score game. And then they come out and so early on, Chris, every single game for their first 5 contests, everything was close. But you could already start to see the cracks in what was happening because they were a 2-3 team. Then they get obliterated by Kansas City on the road. And then from there, you watched it get sideways. Like, they have runaway wins against the Bears and Jets, who we both know to be bad football teams. They lose to the Lions and then hit the skids. The only win that they have since they beat the Jets back in week 9 is a game against the Patriots where they could only score 6 points. I think that was the breaking point for them in terms of their injuries. I think the injuries became too significant. The guys who were missing from one week to the next, the guys who were out in the practice squad elevations just became too significant, and you just watched them week after week after week. If they didn't get the Patriots in that spot, if it was any other team in the NFL, they would have been losers of 6 straight. They're a bad football team, and at the same time, they didn't make a move to fire their head coach or GM until last week. Chris, what do we call a game like that?
I don't know. I didn't get to watch any of it because I was watching the NHL. As soon as October hits, I'm out on Thursday Night Football. But I did check the score when I went to bed, and it was 42-0 at halftime. So I could only imagine that Staley was going to get fired. I didn't know about Tom Telesco, their GM, if he was going to get fired. And then he did get fired. And then I looked at who he hired for coaches. Mm-hmm. He had 3 head coaches he took runs at. Mike McCoy, Anthony Lynn, and Brandon Staley.
Yeah, you get fired.
Yeah.
So because if you're an owner, right, first of all, I loved the fact that I don't care what anyone says about it, the fact that Richard Sherman came out and was dogging Staley at halftime of that game, being, no, you have to fire this guy. And then he doubled down on it after the game and was like, look at this, you have to fire this guy. You just try to, it's rare, right? Like, that's a weird thing when you hear former NFL player turned pundit / broadcaster openly calls for the firing of a head coach in the middle of a game. When's the last time you you remember that.
I have no idea.
I don't think it happens, Chris. I don't think it happens. I don't think that I don't think that you're supposed to. I don't know, I guess in the profession I'm just not used to that, but that's how egregious Staley's game at that point was. I was downstairs in the basement putting the finishing touches on our segment with El Fartiaga for the roundup last week. And Larissa comes down and goes, "Hey, football's on. Do you want me to put it on?" I go, "Yeah. Did you see what the score was?" She goes, "I think 42-0. And I burst out laughing. I go, "What makes you think I want to see that? No, don't put anything on."
How many times do you drive by slowly next to a car accident?
I think that's why she was asking. She goes, "Well, I know how petty you are.
Yeah.
You might want to hate watch the second half because this is ridiculous."
What's that movie from the 80s? You want to go see a dead body?
Stand By Me.
Yeah.
Well, what I love is that the Chargers opened the second half and everyone's like, all right, they had a chance to go in there, whiteboard some stuff, compose themselves. Let's go. Let's get some self-respect back. Their first series ends with a pick six that is nothing but the byproduct of just film work. The linebacker absolutely knew, based on the formation and based on their tendencies, he could break on that ball and just intercept it. And it was a ridiculous, one-handed spin, snag it, tuck it, and jog backwards into the end zone. But that's embarrassing. And what you watch, Chris, is that as they've gone down this stretch of losing these football games, at the beginning of the season, their offense was doing a good job of at least taking care of the football. Now, if you look back over the last 4 games, they managed to keep a clean turnover sheet against the Patriots, but they had 4 against the Ravens, 2 turnovers to the Broncos, 5 of them to the Raiders. As you know, and this kind of comes as Easton Stick takes over at quarterback. Now, Chris, I guess the first question we have to ask ahead of this matchup, what is Easton Stick? I remember the joke. So someone was joking about it sounding like a hockey name.
Yeah, why isn't he playing hockey? You gotta play, that's a hockey name.
Literally Easton Stick. It's too good. It's simply too good. It writes itself.
Yeah, the guy should be playing hockey. I don't know what you're doing playing football.
I don't know if what he did the other night could be considered playing football. It's you see the stat line, and if that's all you went by was the box score, 23 of 32, 257, 3 touchdowns and 1 pick, you would have thought he did a good job, right?
Yeah.
No, it was atrocious. They stalled an untold number of times. And it's really sad when you think about where a team like that's fallen. They don't have their quarterback. He's done for the year. They've kind of gone down. Because if you want to go to the Our-Lads page, what do they have left? Because I'll tell you what's left. All the injuries we talked about. You have Easton Stick, who by and large didn't take shots down the field. Everything was thrown within a 15-yard window.
Will Greer is behind him.
Didn't they just sign him off the Patriots practice squad?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no help coming. Easton Stick, there's nowhere for them to pivot to. But you built the roster like that. If you scroll up there on offense, let's take a look. All the red. So Will Clapp, their starting center, goes down with injury in the game. I saw that happen. Keenan Allen is banged up, meaning that without Palmer and without the, what's the tight end? Parham, you're talking about one of the worst wide receiver cores maybe in the AFC. I mean, what do they have? They've got Alex Erickson, Jalen Guyton, Joshua Palmer, and Quentin Johnston, who was drafted highly. He was taken pretty high in the draft. I know he was taken before Dalton Kincaid.
23rd overall.
And yet Quentin Johnston can't catch the damn football. He just can't. It's been a rough go for him this year. And when you look at some of the worst plays that he's had, it's just like he, as a football player, like let me just look at his statistics here. Receiving. Okay. So where are we here for receiving snaps? So Quentin Johnson is second on the team in receiving snaps. And then if you look at the actual yards, he's only got 124 yards after the catch on the season. He's actually like fourth on the team in that regard. Even though he's supposed to be this fifth on the team, even though he's supposed to be this big, imposing wide receiver, he's one of the last on their team. Well, what is he? Fifth in first downs via reception. Chris, you want to scroll up? 356 yards, 2 touchdowns. What's his drop percentage? Do you know?
I would have no idea. Is it in any of these stats here? Catch percentage?
His catch percentage is only 60.8. Like, that's... it's just not good. So they're a team with no skill at quarterback, or no proven skill, that's also lacking firepower from a skill player position, that's also absorbing injuries at an alarming rate on the offensive side of the ball. And the question becomes, what can we expect to see from them this weekend? Now, I've seen the charts, right? Like, everybody's shown the charts of like, hey, teams that fire their head coach, teams that fire their GM, like, they get a bump. What does that mean for a team like the Chargers, who are so bereft of talent at this point at a lot of key positions? Like, what would you say the upshot for them is, Chris?
I don't even know what their upshot is. I mean, when they fired Staley, I'm surprised that they didn't give it to Kellen Moore.
Well, that's something we're talking about, too. You think, first of all, Tom Telesco, the reason we looked at that salary cap, Chris, go ahead and look back. You want to know why Tom Telesco got fired? He's now hired 3 bad head coaches. Just not good fits. Anthony Lynn, former Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator, not a bad guy, just not a good offensive-minded coach.
The fact that they didn't wait for us to be out of the playoffs to get Daboll, which made perfect sense because Telesco and Daboll went to high school together.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you just wait another week for the Bills to be eliminated to hire a better coach who could have done wonders with Justin Herbert?
Now scroll up to the top of this page. This is what I think is interesting. And this is probably what cost Tom Telesco his job. When you scroll up, go all the way to the top, what you're going to see, go up, 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 all the way to the top. Now, there should be an option to go, okay, multi-year summary. Oh, no, that drop-down menu right there. Change the year from 2023 to 2024. And then update. Okay, tell me how much estimated cap space of the top 51. What's that number say, Chris?
Over here on the right?
Yes.
Minus 45 million.
Imagine telling me that you are this football team with no wins, no upshot, an aging and beat up defense. You are the winners here in 2023 of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. And oh, by the way, you're $45 million over next year's cap already. I saw a tweet the other day that if they restructured every single available contract currently on the roster for cap considerations, not including void years, like not even like adding a void year so you could kick some money down the road, just a standard restructure, they're still $22 million over the cap. Somehow you found yourself to where the New Orleans Saints were, except you had none of the success. You have to fire that GM, right?
I would have just done it based on coaches.
So then the question becomes, you question why Kellen Moore doesn't get the head coaching nod. Who picked the interim head coach? Because generally it would be a GM or someone who had the title of assistant head coach.
Most likely the owner, I would assume.
And what did they go with? It was like two guys that sounded like something out of a cartoon.
No, Giff Smith.
Giff Smith and JoJo what? Who was the other guy?
There's no other guy.
No, there was somebody that got promoted.
Giff Smith.
I know, but so he also got promoted. Let's see. Chargers coaching promotions.
Giff Smith. Do you think it's Giff or Jiff? He was the defensive line coach here in Buffalo in 2010, 11, and 12.
Giff Smith is now, which doesn't seem like, that seems like a name that the Chinese would have made up for an American baseball game back in like 1985 for the Nintendo. It's like Giff Smith sounds like a credible baseball name. Remember that?
Yep.
What was that, Major League or was it Triple Play?
I could see why you...
Guys, Google Triple Play baseball for NES and look at the made-up names that the Chinese came up with.
He's been with the Chargers since 16.
Bobson Dugnut?
So it does...
Still one of my favorites.
It does make sense that with the amount of time he's put in with the organization over multiple coaches.
Do you know who the interim GM is?
I don't know, the owner?
JoJo Wooden. So Giff and JoJo are now running the show out there in Los Angeles. Like, this is gross. Dean Spanos has a mess on his hands. And now you're going to go into a game against a desperate Bills team that has to get this victory in order to keep their postseason hopes alive. And you're lacking talent, like even a baseline of talent, and then you're also lacking health. One of the things that I find most interesting is how they're going to orchestrate this offense, because Easton Stick last week showed us that he doesn't have a ton down the field. The long touchdown passes that he threw against the Raiders were just breakdowns in coverage when the game was so over that they were just playing soft and just kind of, hey, let's keep the clock moving and get the hell out of here. I think that based on the way the Bills just got done playing the Cowboys, I don't know how many free runners in space you're going to see for the Chargers wide receivers in this game. And that's depending on who's available. Now, obviously, Keenan Allen's a special talent, but I don't know if he's going to play.
Somebody's got to get him the ball.
Well, and it makes you wonder, are they going to try to funnel the entire offense through Keenan Allen if he's not ready? Right? Like, I'm just looking to see what happened and where he is, what it makes up for. Keenan Allen injury at Newsweek. Tanking or not, resting the receiver makes sense. They're essentially saying you should just let him ride it out. You're also talking about a relatively bad offensive line. And when I say bad, I'll quantify that for you. Here again, we're coming off this dominant performance 2 weeks in a row where our team, I think, owned the line of scrimmage, decisively so against the Cowboys. You look at the pressures being allowed by this, and it's pretty ugly. You've got a tackle in Trey Pipkins who's allowing 48 pressures and 9 sacks. You've got Rashawn Slater on the other side who's allowing 35 pressures. He's not doing himself any favors. Their guards are giving up pressures and sacks. They've got 10 sacks on the interior of their offensive line this season. And then their starting center, who was one of their better pass and run blockers, we don't know what his status is because he left the last game with a knee injury and had to be carted off the field. So it's very likely that we're going to see this Braden James, who has no experience. I mean, Chris, he was, a 5th-round draft pick in 2021? He has almost no starts to his name. He played a little bit this past week. It was his only game. His only game of the season. And, I mean, he didn't do terrible, but the game was already out of hand at that point. The Raiders weren't sending pressure anymore. I think that this offense is weak. I think that you can lean on them much in the same way that you did against the Cowboys. I think that you've got a quarterback in Easton Stick who Sean McDermott has done very well against rookie quarterbacks in his career. I'm hard-pressed to find, just based on I've only got one game of data at my disposal, but what I see is that at least half of Stick's throws were either behind the line of scrimmage or just within 3 to 4 yards.
Or to the other team.
He only threw one pick.
It was bad.
I mean, it was a gross interception for a touchdown. It was one of the funniest pick sixes I've seen all season. Like, even the linebacker was shocked that he got it. He's just like, oh my God, this is really happening. I think a problem philosophically is going to be if they try to get away from what Staley and the offensive coordinator were running last week, was this idea of protect Easton Stick and allow him to play small ball. You know, early in this season, little bubble screens, there was things teams would do at the line of scrimmage that would give the Bills a lot of trouble. Their tackling was struggling. Shedding blocks was a problem. And so you saw teams able to make hay in those situations. But over the last, I'd say going back to the Eagles game, the screen game for a lot of teams has not been there over the last month. The team is tackling pretty well. They're seeing the field really well. They're taking good angles. They're making good decisions. Our linebackers, say what you want about Dodson. I guess he's here. He's not a gross liability. So I'm content to just, I guess if they really don't think that Dorian Williams is able to keep this thing going, you allow him to keep being out there. But the results have been fine from Dodson. If they allow the Chargers to go out there and try to play small ball against the Bills defense, I think that this is going to blow up in their faces. I think the Bills will it'll be not a repeat of last week because it's hard to recreate history. I think that they're going to have a really difficult time moving the football consistently given the way we rally to the ball and the physicality our defense has been playing with the last 2 weeks. I don't see a world where the approach that they brought to Easton Stick's first start is going to be able to survive. If you couldn't get it past the Raiders, you're definitely not getting it past us. Not only that, but then you talk about the film study that allowed them to get the Easton Stick interception for a touchdown. What else is Sean McDermott going to find? What are he and his linebackers going to pick up on when they do film study? It's going to be interesting to see how they choose to attack that problem and if the offense pivots and decides to try to let Easton Stick air it out. Now, I don't even know where he went to school. Can you Google machine me where Easton Stick came from and what his...
North Dakota State.
And what were some of his college stats? I feel like North Dakota State's put a couple people in the NFL, haven't they?
North Dakota State might be where Carson Wentz went.
That sounds familiar. Top 3 NDSU quarterbacks who made it to the NFL. Yeah, Easton Stick, Trey Lance, and Carson Wentz. So they're all going to be busts? Like, is that right?
I wouldn't call Carson Wentz a bust.
I'll tell you what he doesn't. He doesn't have a bust. You know who does is Nick Foles. Nick Foles has a damn statue. Nick Foles has a statue and Carson Wentz doesn't. Suck it, NDSU.
I mean, there's his playoff stats. I don't know if North Dakota puts out their quarterback stats.
Let's see. Easton Stick.
I got it.
There we go. So, Easton Stick. I can't believe we're talking about this, guys. I can't believe we're devoting time on a podcast talking about the history of Easton Stick. Okay, so in a bad division, he never completed more than 62.5% of his passes. Never threw more than 2,750 yards. Or 52. It's not great. Not great, Bob, is what I would say. Like, he's okay. He's like Tommy DeVito in the fact that, like, oh, he's got some intangibles that you could maybe make a thing around. But his production is meh. I fear for what they might try to do against this Bills team. I could see a world where they think, hey, let's stick with this. Let's let our playmakers make the plays and take the pressure off this rookie. The problem with that is that our team tackles, and you're gonna be baiting yourself into a lot of mistakes, I feel. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, it's not that they're bereft of talent. You know, Khalil Mack is still out there. He's a very good football player. But they're just missing a lot there, too. Because if you scroll down, Chris, that and his name wasn't Otto Ogbonna. It's Otito.
Sure.
Otito. I don't care.
He's injured.
I don't care because you're injured and maybe not playing. They might be entering this game without a nose tackle. Think about what just happened to the Cowboys, who came into a game against the Buffalo Bills missing a nose tackle. They have Nick Williams, who's out. Otto Ogbonna, or Otito Ogbonna, out. And even if they are playing, they're not 100%. At defensive tackle, because I believe they're still one of the teams that's running a 3-4 in the AFC, and I know that a lot of that's fallen by the wayside. Morgan Fox, Austin Johnson, Sebastian Joseph Day, and a rookie named Scott Matlock. There's not much there that I expect to be a threat from a pass rush perspective. So this is a game where, unlike the contest we just came out of against the Cowboys, as long as Torrance is the guy that I worry about. As long as Torrance has his head on a swivel in pass pro, I'm fine with McGovern and Mitch Morse. They've done it for years. I think that this is a game where you can, instead of having to just lean into the run, you can now protect the A and B gap. And you can give Josh Allen time. And you can make some decisive throws downfield off play action when you've frozen the linebacker. I don't know. I look at this defensive line and I say, outside of Khalil Mack, I don't know who here I'm supposed to be afraid of. And they've got a really good linebacking core. Nick Neiman, former Chief, Kenneth Murray, Eric Kendricks. They've got some guys that they can throw out there. I think that our speed, Eric Kendricks is athletic. He's not a great cover man, but he's physical. And then Kenneth Murray is just an athlete. He's an athletic, rangy coverage linebacker type. I think that we're going to have a harder time getting away with some of the run game shenanigans that we did against the Cowboys against this team. At the same time, you can pick on Kendricks a little bit, right? You can get away with a few things against him. And if you look at who's giving up what, Kenneth Murray and Eric Kendricks are both in the top 5 for the team in terms of yardage allowed. And I think it's funny that Eric Kendricks hasn't given up any touchdowns, but he's given up a ton of first downs. And he also has no turnovers in coverage. The passer rating against him when he's targeted is pretty high. It's up over 100. I think there's things in this defense that a Chargers fan could talk themselves into not being... You're not beside yourself. You're going to have an okay pass rush from whatever side of the line Khalil Mack is on. You're going to have linebackers who can cover a little bit, who can do some things for you if you try the same stretch run plays that we were running against the Cowboys. You're not going to get that. But then also what we're going to have to do is try to attack the back end when they do just lock down the box. Their secondary is actually kind of sneaky good. They're not world beaters. I'm not going to claim that they are. Asante Samuel Jr. is a player that I really liked coming out in the draft. I think he's done very well for himself. Right? Chris, Asante Samuel Jr., he's second on the team in targets. And he's got the lowest NFL passer rating against on the team. 74 targets, 48 receptions, 4 touchdowns, but 2 picks. So you're playing with fire if you're trying to pick on Asante Samuel Jr. He's got good ball skills. He's good coverage-wise. I think that seeing him on the outside, it's going to be hard for him because they also have injuries at nickel corner. So that's another mismatch for the Buffalo Bills to try to exploit. I just think that Buffalo has too many weapons for this group of guys who is missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you look at the IR list, probably 7, 8 players who might make a difference in a football game. It's hard to win when your team's like that, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah.
Doesn't it take you back to the drought era Bills?
Yeah.
Where you'd get to this point of a Bills season. I remember when Richie Incognito got his first start with the Buffalo Bills after being cut for throwing his helmet at now Chiefs coordinator, then Rams coach, Steve Spagnuolo. They cut him from the roster. He got back-to-back personal fouls. They pulled him out of the game. He threw his helmet at the coach and then got kicked off the field, and he was just laughing. They cut him, and that next week he was on the field for Buffalo because we were just so desperate for bodies. I feel like that's where the Chargers are right now. They're a team that just on both sides of things are fighting it a little bit. They've got they've got a lot of problems and they don't have a lot of solutions. And now you've got new people stepping into both coaching roles that are going to try to right the ship. I mean, maybe the guys will play harder, but it's like I talked about last week. You can talk yourself up all you want. If you don't have the tools and you don't have the talent to beat somebody who's that much better than you, things fall apart pretty quickly. I'd like to think the Chargers are a little more competitive than they were this week in this game, but I'm not gonna. I certainly wouldn't bet this game, would you, Chris? Other than what's the line right now? If you could find the early line for Buffalo,
I bet it's Buffalo -6 is my guess of what it would be. I'll look it up.
While you're looking that up, I want to talk about this. If there's any franchise that deserves this,
I was way off.
If there's any franchise that deserves what's happening to the Chargers right now, it's them. And it's not even their fans' fault. It's Dean Spanos. When Dean Spanos moved the team out of San Diego, I said I hope nothing good ever happens to them ever again. Because I'm somewhat sympathetic to this idea that if you as a fan base have supported this team from when it was nothing to its current structure where it currently is, and then all of a sudden they pull the rug out from under you and take it to a city where no one gives a fuck. You're not good. No one cares. You moved your team that has never won anything to a city that only cares about winners. What, you thought that you could just manifest it into something? Dean, you thought by shunning a massive part of your diehard fan base, a homegrown, organically cultivated fan base, by alienating them, you thought you were doing yourself and the league favors. Now, not only are you a laughingstock of a franchise, but also your home games aren't even really home games. You're a second-class citizen in someone else's building, and everyone knows it. And at the same time, you don't have a fan base in LA. They don't support you, and they won't support you. Because what do you have? A shiny, expensive quarterback who's never won a damn thing. Never. He doesn't have a playoff win to his credit, Chris.
He almost did.
You have a fired GM who's gone because he spent money that should have yielded some kind of result. But he invested poorly, and it didn't. And now you're a team with no playoff victories under this GM over how many years?
He was here for 10 years.
Okay, so you had a decade. You pissed away that owner's money and time. You burned through quarterback prospects. You burned through coaching prospects. You made bad calls. You as a franchise have given the people of LA no reason to root for you. And you've given the people of San Diego, who you would hope still had your back, every reason in the world to hate your guts and applaud your downfall. I, for one, couldn't be happier about it. And I hope that we get to help write just another small verse in what is the book of all the ways that the Chargers have fucked this thing up over the last 15 years of their existence. On Saturday night, when we go into LA, what is the spread in this game, Chris?
Bills -11.5.
I have to imagine we're the biggest favorite of the week, right? 11.5 is pretty aggressive.
Yeah, the only other double-digit ones were Chiefs -10 over Las Vegas, Philadelphia -10.5 over the Giants.
Yeah, that's a big one. Chris, do we even want to do keys to victory, or do we just not care? I mean, this one's so hard to do.